Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a bit more of a proper review on the Leatherman Free P2. I've carried and used it a fair bit now, and I think I've got some refinements on my original thoughts, as you would expect. That original unboxing seemed to upset a few folks, just because I took it out, I was a bit awkward with it, as I think everyone would be, getting a brand new tool that they haven't quite worked out, and I was just hoping to show a bit of an unfiltered experience of getting a brand new Leatherman that you pay full price for, and geez, I ended up not being that thrilled with. I'm a little bit happy with it now, but it still sits in a bit of an awkward spot in Leatherman's line. So what I'll do in this review is I'll go over all the tools in it, talk about how successful they are, and then talk about some overall final thoughts. But the basics of it first up are that this is a mid to large size Leatherman that is for ideally everyday carry. I think in the company's eyes they've put a clip on the side of it to carry as a pocket knife, as you would, and so I've done that for the last week. The drawer of these is the magnetic release, which both holds the handle tools in place and also lets them have a completely free falling plier arm, so there's no resistance in those plier arms at all, because then they lock in through these tabs here when the pliers are open, and then they hold together with these two darker grey magnet sections here and here when the plier is closed. So that's the goal of the Free. It swings freely, I guess, is where the name comes from. And I've certainly got the knack of it. You find yourself pushing on these tabs here to break the magnet and get the things open, and that's kind of how they go. So that is a pretty successful action. While I've got them open, we'll start with the pliers. So the plier head is a pretty robust Leatherman plier head. Feels about as quality as, say, the Multitool plier head. Leatherman seems to suggest that it's their most robust so far, which may well be the case. I've never tested a Leatherman plier head to the point where I've needed to know that. Even the Skeletal plier head, which I know have had failures in the past, mine has been absolutely fine being at this rate. And in fact, I remember saying I had a Gerber center drive multi-tool with a plier, the wire cutters actually broke on that one, and then I used the Leatherman Juice, which is this class of plier head, to finish the cut, which did fine. So I've never had an issue with Leathermans. Personally, I know some other folks have. Anyway, these seem good. They've got their 154 cm cutters, which seem to be the standard. They save everyone a bit of time and the company a bit of money, not having to do warranty repairs when you've got a 25-year warranty like Leatherman does. Bent jaws are something that the user fixes now. So we pay $20 now and get a replaceable set of cutters. And that's, I guess, saves us time, saves Leatherman money, whatever. It's got some knurling to turn bolts, and then the needle point heads do come to a nice point. You can pull out a hair with them. All that good stuff shows Leatherman can make a very well aligned set of pliers. In the rear of the plier head, you've got wire crimpers, and they say that this bottom part of the cutter here are the hard wire cutters, which frankly I just use that part for every wire that I cut because they get full-on anvil closure every time. So there you go. And yeah, you can crimp wires here for, say, if you're doing power sockets at home. And yeah, overall it's a really successful plier head. The plier arms, they're smoothed down until here, and then you run into a pretty decent ergonomic problem of these locks here, which, as I said before, are for opening those magnetic arms. If you grip down and do a proper wire cut, you'll find that this digs into your hands and is uncomfortable. These pliers are less comfortable than the charge pliers. As you can see, they're totally rounded over. The wave pliers have some sort of metal lipping that I do acknowledge, but certainly not as uncomfortable as these ones here when you're properly bearing down for a cut. Most of your stuff you'll probably just adapt to hold up here and not get these bits, because look at it, it's quite obvious. That's sticking out. It's not proud. It's proud of the handles there. It's going to dig in and hurt. So I don't know. I guess they just figured worth it for the magnetic opening. I disagree. But anyway, plier headers find some ergonomic issues on the pliers. Tool review now. First up is the knife. This is a perfectly successful Leatherman folding knife. It's got these serrations, which I don't love, but I understand. The P4 has the two knives in it. This is the P2, so they've blended the knife. I would have been just as happy with a plain edge knife. I think the scallops are a little bit too deep. I've used these for cutting some paracord, and they're so deep the paracord actually does sit in them, making for a bit of an awkward holding pull cut. So I would have preferred shallower scallops, which then of course you have to sharpen a little bit more often. Not a huge problem though, but yeah, I just would prefer, they're just rather deep indeed, so just something small about those. I would just advise, if they care, to change that. But it's a nicely hollow ground knife otherwise. 420 HC steel. It's quite dull now because I've used this as my EDC knife, and that's not a huge amount of length to be taking the brunt of all my daily cutting, but it's done fine. One hand opens using this sort of opening eye here, opening slit, and The lock is, you find yourself reaching there for a little bit, but the lock is back here. Very robust locks on this, I must say. That spring there does go very deep into the tang of the blade. There's a fair chunk of knife that it sits in. So when you have the knife open, there is basically no play up and down, slight bit of side to side, but definitely multi-tool standard. The grip on it is pretty okay. Slight metal edge here to really bear down on, but it's alright. It's a multi-tool knife. You don't expect too much. The scissors, on the other hand, they're going for those full-size kind of surge or wingman style scissors. They are a little bit bigger than the charge scissors, but not a huge amount, frankly. So they're easier to access than the charge scissors. I always found the charge scissors slightly nail busting, but putting them next to each other, you see you get a couple of extra millimeters per blade, a little bit, even then. Not a huge amount, frankly. The immediate perception is that they're bigger, but they're actually not that much bigger. But they're probably a little bit sturdier, a little bit less rattly, a little bit less rickety, and they are good for cutting precise little squares of duct tape, which I every so often have to do to repair my son's keyboard when his little flat keys get mashed a little bit too hard. So I've been doing a bit of that with them, and that's fine. All the tools are outside on this, so the magnets hold them in place. I'll get into how well they do that in a little bit, but we'll start off with these tools here. So you get your two primary kind of robust drivers. So your flathead here, and your Phillips here. Your flathead also doubles as, I guess, something as a pry, they've put something of an edge here. They say it's to open packages. I would just use my knife, but at any rate, it's there's a working sort of scrapey kind of edge that you could sort of gouge or dig with just a little bit. No worries. Overall, though, it's not quite a chisel. It's not quite anything. It's a bit clumsy to use as a flat, and there's almost an identical flat on the other side. I would have preferred just do a 3D Phillips, guys, is definitely what I would have suggested if I was looking at. Just do a 3D Phillips and put just a normal flat next to the Phillips using half this thickness. That's what I would suggested anyway. I don't love the 2D Phillips. It works on bigger Phillips bolts, but I much prefer the bit driver idea of the Charge series, just because even though it has a bit less reach, as you can see, you can get much finer Phillipses, and you just have the one that you want to use all the time. And this one I've got the flat and the Phillips in. It's great, absolutely fine. A little bit extra reach, but the Rebars absolutely destroys it. The Rebar's Phillips driver is just better. It's more precise. They've gone with the super high polished kind of same feeling of the Wingman and Sidekick tools, which I don't love. They just feel like they're more inclined to roll out of a screw head as well. So just not super stoked on these, or frankly any of the handle tools. Busting open these four, you've got a real sort of motley bunch of odd tools here. So the file here is really short. You could knock a burr off of something, or a plastic lip off a freshly cut bit of Perspex, perhaps something like that would do fine for it. I much prefer when they go, as I said, the Charge Wave does the full length diamond file / cross file, so for metal or wood on this side, and then you could sharpen things with the diamond file on the other side. So you actually use this diamond file to sharpen a knife. It's about a 300 grit or something. It's fine. Much prefer that. This just looks so stumpy and weird in comparison. It's got a little medium-sized flat driver on there. They put flat drivers on the end of all these tools here except for the can opener. And there you go. You're never short of a flat driver with these tools for sure. Don't love the file. I have had myself use it a couple of times, but nothing that ever really occurred to me. I'm going to get my Leatherman out to use that file on something. I'd probably just use my knife blade and smooth something out with that. Anyway, the ruler here is on the back of the larger flathead driver. So as I said, there's a flathead driver on this side as well, which is about the same size and just a bit stumpier. You can see they're pretty much the same diameter. So yeah, this will be a large flathead driver. It's on a pretty thin bit of steel though, so if you are using too much torque, maybe use this other one. But yeah, and on the back they've put quite a silly little ruler, to be honest. It's just, you could use it to perhaps double check screw or bolt widths or something like that. But I would have much preferred them just doing the sides as the ruler like they do with everything else. Sacrifice this cool finish. I don't know, just what I would have done. Anyway, that's that, and it's got a wire stripper there, so once you get your wire strip started, you can put your thumb between there and just pull off your wires. So there's that. This tool here they say it's an awl, but it's actually got a tiny little flat screwdriver on the end, and it does actually work on my glasses, so it's actually not an uncommonly used tool, so I'm happy enough with that. And yeah, it's sharp enough to be able to force through metal and sew with if that is something that you do, but it's not like an awl you can do engraving with and things like that. You'll ruin your flathead driver if you do that on too much wood. I don't know. A bit of an awkward tool again. All these tools are just a little bit awkward to me. All just feel like those sort of little wingman sidekick style tools. And yeah, I don't really mean that as a compliment, unfortunately. I wasn't stoked on the wingman or the sidekick. And then there's a can opener. Some people think a can opener is indispensable. In Australia, and I always get shit for saying that can openers aren't the necessity they need to be on multi-tools, and that's just from my lived experience. The amount of times I've had to use a can opener on a can out somewhere when I'm not in my kitchen with my kitchen can opener, I could count on one hand, probably on one finger. It's really, really rare to not have a pull tab, or if your pull tab breaks, there's other ways to open a can. You can just use your knife blade. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, the can opener is, in my opinion, not something that is 100% essential. But you know, whatever. Most people seem to think you need one. So cool, go for it, guys. I would have preferred get the bottle opener, which there is a bottle opener on this tool. Get the bottle opener off that one. Go like you've done on the Charge and do the can/bottle opener tool. That one out. This is one thing about the Charge that is not great, is that the accessibility of the tools can get a bit crappy, especially as you get a little bit of moisture in there and it makes them a little bit more frictionful. But you can use this for cans and bottles, whereas this other can opener on this one is just a can opener. So, you know, it's not a massive thing, but I just feel like they could have refined the tool selection just a little bit. But they never give us what they want, do they? Never give us 100% what they want, because then that'd be the only multi-tool they sold. At any rate, that's the overall tool review, and I'll bust out these three guys just to give you my overall impressions of the thing so far. Okay, so the Leatherman Free P2 is not as good as the Leatherman Wave, which is currently selling on Blade HQ, the Wave Plus, for $20 less American. This does nothing better than the Wave at all, apart from being fun to open. And being fun to open is something that is, if you're choosing a tool and it's going to be your only Leatherman, that's not what you go with. It's just not, in my opinion. The tools on the Wave are better, more substantial, or more versatile. These are sort of not more substantial nor more versatile. They just fit with this exact make of the tool. The Charge is a bit more expensive. Blade HQ's got these at about 150, and yeah, you just get a nicer blade and a bit more of an ergonomic piece here. The Rebar, again, which is probably about almost half the price of this US, is about on par with its overall construction, and it has a better tool selection as well. You just have to do the old-fashioned way and open them from the tool once the pliers are open, which, to be honest, I don't think is a bad thing. Every tool on the outside, I don't quite know where that came from and why that's seen as the better thing. Nor is the one-hand everything. I think the one-hand everything is good in very certain fields, but I think most folks are just happy to have everything on the same thing and then just get them out in your own time rather than there being a rush. I don't think it's as much of a rush in terms of when I've used Leatherman. I can see up a ladder it's good to be able to get your pliers out one-handed or something like that, or your knife. But the Wave and the Charge are able to do that as well. I've always been able to open the Wave and the Charge with one hand. It just might take the side of your pants. It might take, a bit of fidgeting, but you're going to get there. And then there's also the one-handed opening tool, which is the one with the sliding pliers, which I've reviewed as well. I just don't see the benefits in this one over the other things in their range. It's sort of automatically obsolete by the Wave. It is slightly better to carry in the pocket because it is maybe a little bit lighter and the clip is better than this clip. This clip I always found a little bit too flat, but then you could probably modify that anyway. It doesn't slide into the pants pocket as well as this. It's just an awkward one, guys. It's, and then if you want a pure EDC, the skeletal is just its knife and its pliers and its screwdriver, and that's about all I've ever had to really need on the go. Files and stuff, you're generally using around the home, and you can just go and get your Leatherman from I keep this one next to my phone. It's just there for anyone to use if they need like an odd tool around the home. Again, I hate to be the downer on this tool, but it just doesn't seem to have a place in Leatherman's range. The quality of the inner handle tools seems like from a much less expensive tool, say from the Sidekick or the Wingman, which are appropriately priced, or the Rev even, which is appropriately priced. These tools on these here and the Rebar and the Super Tools, they've got that extra crispness to them, which makes them seem either a little bit less likely to slip out of their bolts, or just a little bit easier to move around and maneuver inside the tool, even if you did have to sort of use the nail-busting nail nicks. I do like this idea. I like how they're thinking, you know what, people don't like hurting their nails pulling out their can opener, but as I said, the can opener is the only tool in the wave I've ever really struggled with. And these, yeah, it's cool, the magnets are cool, but that's kind of all it is. It's just cool. And not, you know, pocket knives where we're always trying to outdo each other with cool handle designs. That's a field that is, you know, and I can't blame them for trying. That's, you know, the pocket knives are a field where we're trying to outcool each other. You're making a multi-tool, it's a bit more of a practical thing. And I think having the fun of being able to flip and play with your pliers, which, you know, is a big selling point for some, I just don't think it's worth the sacrifices that are made or the extra cost. And as you can see here, just by opening it, then the magnets are sort of, these tools are coming out again. And I did notice that every time I'd use them, the tools flip out. The whole thing's just not quite as up to spec as Leatherman's usually are. Even when Leatherman makes an unusual design, like, hey, you remember the Vista and the Genus, you know, they were still really well put together and really well thought through. This just kind of seems a bit odd, like a bit of an odd one out. Like it's kind of Sidekick or Wingman quality level, but then wave price level. The pliers are great, like a good solid plier head for sure. Just everything else on it is just a little bit strange. They've just gone for perhaps a little bit too much of the, and hey, I always say fun is a great thing to buy, you know, a knife or whatever for, but I think you can have just as much fun and get just as much satisfaction out of the cheaper Leatherman Wave or the Leatherman Rebar. Yeah. Bit of a funny review, just not quite winning me over. I don't think this is going to stick around with me, given that I have a Wave, a Surge, a Charge, and a Skeletal, and a Rebar. My Rebar's on loan somewhere, though. I can't even remember who I've loaned it to. But anyway, it's just a bit of an odd one out. And this is from someone who loves Leatherman as a company. You can scroll through my videos. My first videos were on Leatherman's. The PS4 is one of my favorite things ever. Look, I'm not an anti-Leatherman person. This just feels on par with more than, this is something more like SOG would do. Like this feels more like a SOG tool. Not that SOG tools are bad, but they're just that level of like, that kind of level down from everything that Leatherman's done up until this point. Yeah, but still a bit lukewarm on it, I'm sorry to say, guys. Look, I hope this has been of some value to you. It's not a bad tool. It's really not. It's, as I said, it's cool to see them, and I was just so happy to see them making like another full-size multi-tool. Just certain things about it just seem a bit out of place to me. That's all. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye, guys.
Oh, Bimo, how'd you get so pregnant? Who's the mother? Oh, who's the father? Shh. I'll tell you if you keep it a secret. We will.